Hi and welcome to Woodworking Tips from the Hips, with the best tips in woodworking, probably. Today we're going to be making a rebate using a rebate plane. A rebate is basically taking the corner out of a length of wood. This is an old wooden rebate plane. As you can see, it has a wooden fence underneath which can be adjusted with screws. That basically slides up and down like that, increasing or decreasing the width of cut, which is the width of the rebate we're going to be making. It also has a depth stop on it, which goes up and down, and that decides how deep the rebate is going to be. There's also a nicker, which is very useful when you're doing cross grain work, because it cuts the wood before you actually start planing it, so you don't get tear out. But I usually leave it in when I'm doing long grain work anyway. It seems to make a cleaner cut. To advance the blade on one of these for a deeper cut, I just tap the end of the iron lightly with a hammer, and to retract it I tap the back of the plane again with the hammer. When you're cutting a rebate, you want something that's reasonably easy to push through. For this size rebate, that's a reasonably thick shaving, but it pushes easily with a sharp blade in there. Okay, so cutting a rebate on something large like this, piece of cake really. It's large enough that you can clamp it onto the workbench and you can run your plane along the corner to cut out the wood. No problem. But if you want to cut on something a bit smaller, and I'm going to be cutting a rebate on a section the same as this, you have a few problems. First of all, when you get down to depth, the fence is virtually as deep as the piece of wood. So you can't actually clamp it from underneath, so you couldn't put it in a vise, for example. You'll see that the depth stop also comes across most of the material, so you can't really clamp it from above. The best way I've found is, like I've set it up here, using the bench dogs to stop it moving up and down the bench. And don't worry if you don't have bench dogs, you'll easily just drive in a countersunk screw at one end, push your work up against that, and then drive in a countersunk screw at this other end to hold it at the back. So that stops it running up and down the bench stops it going down. The only other direction you have to worry about is what to use towards the camera, so that direction. What I've got here is a piece of 6mm MDF clamped onto my bench over here and raised up so it's almost as high as the work, because we're going to be pressing on this corner with the plane, pressing against the bench downwards and in that direction. So if we support it at the top here and it's supported by the bench, we can put a lot of pressure on here and nothing's going to move. And that's the important thing. Take your plane, set it about 2 inches back from the end. Just double check your fence at depth isn't going to actually touch the bench. So I'll just set it on the depth stop, and you can see I've got about 1/16 of an inch. So set the iron back over the work, fence against the work, about 2 inches from the end. Hold the plane down with one hand, fence against the work with the other hand. Nice and steady, push forwards. We've taken a shaving off from here to there. We can then work back a little bit further, another couple of inches, longer shaving, and again, all the way to the other end. We're almost down to depth at that end, obviously very shallow at this end. And we just keep going until it won't cut anymore, so the depth stop is riding on the work for the whole length. You can hear, I get here, we're already at depth. Just clear the shavings if they get caught up in the mouth. Few shavings when you don't think you're cutting anything, just tidies up any other little bits and pieces that might be in there. As you can see, the shavings, lovely and large, you're not going to breathe those in easily. That's why I prefer this method to using, say, a router. And there's the finished rebate. Lovely and clean, sharp, done really quickly. In fact, I reckon that's probably the quickest method you can do a one-off rebate. Join me next time for more tips from the hips.